It's on brand for us, you know.
Yeah, right. We're just never focused.
And we're live.
Oh, okay then.
Hey, all right.
Well then, welcome back to this emotional, for me, wrap-up of our first campaign on Nerds of Legend. Well, our second campaign, I guess, if in the actual continuity of the stories. But Ticto and Edward managed to save the multiverse and are now maybe living happily ever after. I mean, that's
we didn't really talk about that.
Campaigns.
We didn't really talk about it.
So I would like to, as always, welcome Ben, who formerly played Ticto Talkkeeper, and Brian played Edward, the Everflame Niven, and I was the DM. I'm now going to be a player in our next campaign.
Yep. And hopefully I won't crash and burn.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yeah, so...
We'll leave the end of this, and Ben, you could pitch what your idea is for the next campaign. Or you can do it now. I don't care.
We can do that at the end.
Okay.
Here's our little teaser.
I know. I really like that setup of like the little foreshadowing in the background. Could it be this or that?
With my new Matt from Gen Con, courtesy of Brennan and Colleen, if they're watching.
Nice.
It's nice. I did want to do one little teaser from something that they showed me that they got from Gen Con and brought for me. There's a new card game by the original creator of Magic the Gathering.
You had me a new card game.
Yeah, so it's called Keyforge, and it's different.
Not new.
It's relatively. Then what is it? They told me it was new. So how new is it then?
I like how Brian just is like Snopes for
I showed it to you earlier, and you're like,
"That's not new. That was created by a guy in his garage in Algonquin."
Yeah. You mentioned that, like, oh yeah, there's this new thing, and I'm like, oh okay.
Yeah,
and then like I see it, and you're like Keyforge, and I'm like, wait, no, I know that one.
Oh, it must have just been a new card release. My bad.
To his wall of Keyforge shit. I've had this since the 7th grade. Fuck you!
It must have just been a new faction release or something like that.
I mean, it's very possible it was like some new expansion. Or
yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because instead of collecting cards, every single deck is pre-generated by a computer, and so there's all kinds of different deck combinations that you can get so you would want to collect different decks as opposed to different, sets of different cards. So it's interesting that by just buying this pack, you're ready to play. There's no deck building or anything.
That is Fantasy Flight Games, right?
This is made by, Fantasy Flight Games.
Yeah, okay.
I played it last night. It is a little bit like Magic, but it's a lot different, and it's kind of easier to play, but not at the same time. It might have just been because I'm brand new to it, so I was trying to remember all the rules, but it was interesting. There's no life totals. It's all about building your army and collecting resources that allow you to progress to the next phase of the game. So we can do an episode on it later.
Pitch to Brian Ballard.
Yeah, right?
That's nice. You're excited about something and he like makes you feel like a noob at the same time.
Yeah. I showed it to him earlier and he didn't even pay. He's like, oh yeah.
Let me show you when I started playing. Is that you at 21? Yes. Yes it is. Fuck you.
Anyway, getting into the we decided that we were going to do a sort of wrap-up on our campaign, kind of look back on the actual season, the whole campaign, and thoughts, favorite moments, all kinds of things like that. So maybe, Joel, do you want to start off on a favorite moment or moments?
I remember... I gotta have a goal for this in the very beginning. If it wasn't obvious to anybody watching, I'm just like, let's just fuck around for a while. Like, let's. I had a main bad guy come figure. And I'm a big fan of the old, like the old gods, like the AD&D ones, back when it was like all heavy, and like the lore was thicker and more like good gods, bad gods. And so I was like, let's go to the worst, hence the guy with the scrolls of a bunch of people who are too. But I like the idea of like people messing with fate that are too dumb to know what they're doing. Like, this will give me power. And then like one guy's like, it'll kill everybody. And they're like, whatever.
Yeah, you got like the band of the band of cultists that ends up melting their faces off because they're too dumb. Like, they're messing with forces that were beyond their power.
Yes. Standard fantasy thing, like in the very first episode, which unfortunately everybody wasn't able to see due to a very temperamental OBS and me being not smart enough to pull it off Twitch at the time or understand that was even a possibility.
Not realizing that I had to toggle the box for a record function.
This was a massive, and still is a massive learning curve for all of us, because I am not tech savvy. I'm learning. And if any of you that watched our early episodes, it sounds like I'm literally holding the mic by the cord and spinning it around my head while trying to talk to people.
It's never that bad. You just peeked out all the time.
Bullshit. The part where I learned that I have to face my mic a certain way, where I would like hold it, like spin it, and I'm fucking deaf, and then you spin it back around. No, it's a big learning curve, and I'm a dumbass. So,
you figuring out that you have a directional mic.
Oh yeah, the fact that we even have people that listen to us still and aren't like, oh, that guy that talks all the time's a dumbass. I'm continually floored by, but
constantly sounding like you're gargling semen,
The turning point, I think, was a conversation I had with Brian, who is so much better at creating fantasy content than I am. Because he was like, I was like, well, where do you think this is going? And he's like, oh, I think we're repairing the damage from what was done in the last campaign. I'm like, yeah, that's absolutely what we're doing. No, we're not. That was 100% not what we were doing. I was just spitballing and making it up. But I remember I was like actually driving to work at night, and like Brian mentioned that the whole campaign like coalesced from that point.
And then I think you hung up on him, and immediately you got off the phone with him and immediately called me and was like, "This is what we're doing." I was like,
"Oh yeah." I was like, "I was so excited." I was like, "Actually, this is perfect."
Yeah.
And it was. I was very excited because it all made sense. Like the Great Grift ended in such a weird place where like these like powerful characters ascended to godhood by just fucking with people.
No.
And I'm like,
being horrible assholes.
Right. And becoming this thing where we are now the whole like I never thought and I wonder if this happens with a lot of like homebrew campaigns where you think, what happens next? Like what was the impact of it? Because a lot of the stuff is go in, find the big bad, slap him around, and then you're done. And then everybody's like, look at those heroes over there. And you're like, yes, we're going to hero away here for the rest of our lives. But what about campaign?
What about the power vacuum? What about the power vacuum?
Resulted in, like, the first one resulted in the entirety of Faerun being, like left to one god, and I was like, that was pretty cool. Yeah. So coming up with the rest of it was a lot of fun. I did like the noir episodes, the little bits of intrigue that we were able to throw into Eberron. But it was so quick to see how my original plan just got thrown out the window. And we're like, we're going to go start jumping the Planescape and be like, what's going on? Yeah. It's like a Magic the Gathering.
I mean, let's be real. Your initial plan from the first episode got thrown out the window when we literally threw ourselves out of a window.
Yeah. That's when I realized that when I am a player next, I will fuck with everything you do. Everything you do. You're going to be like...
You act like I do it on purpose, and
What?
You act like I do it on purpose, and I'm really just following the
You are aware. I'm not trying to like burst your perception of reality, but you are in control of all of the actions your character does. So when I'm like, hey, there's a door over there, you're like, right, fireball, and you just make a new one. It was your choice to do so.
I never did that. That's slander.
Accidentally do shit without Ben's consent. Ben did have to sign off on every single thing Ticto did.
I mean, you did agree to have a chaotic good character.
I don't feel having a chaotic good character is the problem. What are my choices? Not those. Thanks.
Paired with a character who had questionable morality.
I know how to play with Brian.
True neutral, baby.
Yeah. I know how to play. Yeah. Let's go over that. Let's, just for the fun's sake, go over your character's stats. Let's start with Edward, who was the most enigmatic character. Explain to me what your motivations were, what your stats were, and why you chose to play him the way you did.
Okay, so...
I mean, an evil druid, I've come across a lot of times. A druid that's like, I don't care, I'll kill everyone. You don't really see that. That kind of goes against the typical trope of the druid. Of, you know, like, nature, love everything, and, you know... And you're like... I mean, you killed an entire, like, a majority of the village in the last game.
Yeah, but, like, that was true. Because here's the thing. A lot of people, when they play druids, they go with this very stereotypical, very cookie-cutter kind of druid. Yeah, in lack of a better term, they absolutely go 100% hippie, where it's like, no, my character's just going to be, like, the kind of, like, wander off into the woods sort of character and, you know, like, hug a tree. That's
literally what you think of when you think of a druid. Like, it's something between some, like, deerskin-wearing... like naturalist or a hippie or a combination of a tie-dye deerskin wearing naturalist hippie.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I tried very hard to do was not only to balance myself in terms of what I want to do as far as the character is concerned, but also hold true to like a lot of the ideas and personality traits and everything else I rolled up. So one of the things on my character sheet here is, as part of my ideas section, change. Life is like the seasons, in constant change, and we must change with it. Now, for my character...
necessary.
Yeah.
For my character, I was always in constant struggle because I always view neutrality, in terms of like alignment or whatnot, as balance. I feel like my character knew that life was a series of changes, and was okay with that. But that he also realized that whatever the natural flow of change is, whatever the natural progression of time is, that it was, in this case, wrong. Like, it was far more than it should be. Like, if life is like a river where it's always flowing and going and constantly changing and so on and so forth, then this is a river that has just suffered a storm and is threatening to devour. Like, it's not the natural...
Basically, the river had stopped flowing, basically.
No, not that it was stopped flowing.
Overflowed.
Yeah.
It was overflowed. It was, you know, becoming greater than it possibly could have been. Like, you know, if a river is meant to be to a degree, you know, like...
From my thought process, if you look at Faerun, what had happened was the world had basically stagnated. It had come to a stop. There was no change happening because everything was ordered to the point where nothing happened, you know, because everything, all of this, you know, this ordered evil came into play and just was basically like, puts the thumb down and was basically like, you will do your job and nothing else, and pay your services to Asmodeus.
That's one way of looking at it, but that's not the way that Edward looked at it.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, to Edward, what he saw was that Asmodeus represented a different type of change, and while Edward believes change can, be a natural progression of life, and therefore we should change with it, sort of thing, there is still a difference between a good change and a bad change.
Yeah.
And therefore, like, if Asmodeus represents the change that could be coming to the entirety of the multiverse if he gets enough power, or if he continues to do what it is he's doing, and the universe begins to unravel around it. Like, there is certainly, like, change that can happen that ultimately destroys what is. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is a change coming. It doesn't have to be this stuff. You know what I'm saying?
You just said a point that was I did enjoy. I did enjoy the fact that I was able to meld to where, like, everything had changed, and I liked that we were able to add a certain level of layering to it.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say you decided to say, fuck it. We're, like, Asmodeus is a good deal. Yeah, everybody's fed. Everybody's got a little piece of what they're doing. But it's a horrible system. Like, everybody's fat and taken care of, like, as we joked about the American healthcare system, like, most of us are pretty much healthy.
Yeah.
But it still is expensive, and a lot of us are, we're not changing. Like, that, I do find it funny that that's how we portrayed the clerics. Like, they were like an HMO.
Yeah.
Like, come in for your monthly healing. I don't know why you're trying anymore.
Yeah.
But, I like that if you guys had decided to be like, if you guys had decided to be like, hey, this isn't so bad, we're going to join. Like, if Asmodeus had been like, you too could be gods, that shit still would have gone south. Like, it would have, the story wouldn't have ended with an ascension to godhood or anything. You guys would have then still had to face the fact that the entire balance of the multiverse was unraveling.
Yeah.
And I think that was an interesting story, because it's still, my goal was to keep you guys on the path of good, on the path that we had to change. And you brought that out, Edward, saying change is always great, but there was always the lingering threat in the background of, like, well, if we didn't do anything, everything was going to be gone.
Yeah. And
I think you being able to see it kind of, like, helped you guys be like, no, this is imperative that we have to switch this. We have to take care of this. So I'm sorry, Brian, to get in there. That was a point that came from when we had discussed merging the first campaign with this one. I think it was pretty neat. So continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. Something else I was going to bring up, though, was one of my flaws, because, of course, I'm trying to, stay true to the character. And the flaw that I rolled up was I am slow to trust members of other races, tribes, and societies.
Oh, my.
I completely understand why I would feel that, like, these people, these beings that we know of who become evil gods, they can't be trusted.
Yeah.
It also explains your final of them being like, we're just gonna go. We don't have time. We don't want to be part of this, And you're like, fuck you.
Yeah, you see a human, cat, and an undead just like, no, they're gonna come back and screw this up.
What I saw was not a human, an undead, and a cat. What I saw were 3 gods that became evil of their own volition.
Yeah.
And then became the change that was destroying the multiverse.
Yeah.
Whether they had meant to or not. Whether they were remorseful or not. I don't know. We never really interacted with them as gods, so I could never really tell
Mr. Whiskers, you did. It's funny.
We saw him.
Mr. Whiskers was a murder machine, so...
Well, yeah, that was also interesting, is you guys never actually sought them out. you originally were like, let's seek out Asmodeus, which was like not going to happen. Like that's such a big thing. Like Asmodeus is not going to happen for you to find him.
Tall order there, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel that's a tall order for any level character in any campaign. You know, like
yeah,
but
even just like normal, you know, like normal Asmodeus, you know.
Yeah. Not like super juiced up Asmodeus. Like it doesn't. He's one of those background characters like that you really don't see the need to pop in and out.
Yeah.
That's like in Warhammer, though, the Emperor of Mankind. How often does he actually play a story? You know, a role in the story. You know.
Never. He's a corpse.
Arguably one of the most powerful characters in fantasydom, but is like not. He's a background character.
Never.
You know, Asmodeus is like the big bad that you're like, well, you can go talk to Asmodeus. You're like, no, I'm cool. I don't need that shit.
Outside of the Horus Heresy, you don't see the Emperor at all. He's a corpse god, you know.
Yeah. So, what were...
I didn't get to talk about Mike.
What was his stat block look like? What did Edward's character, when you created him, look like?
Oh, when he created him? Well, I created him with a very different intention than what actually happened, because I created the character around the idea of playing him in an Eberron setting, a neo-noir setting. So I wanted to have not so much his stats correlate to that, because it's hard to like put like numbers to stories. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just a number. You know, you can have it be anything on piece of paper, but it's going to be a number mechanically no matter what. But now, that doesn't dictate the story or anything.
Did you use you rolled him up, right? You didn't point by, you didn't...
Yeah, I rolled him up with your permission. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken here, because I'm looking over his character sheet and I'm trying to remember where all of his placements went to. Because I took at some point what was it? Oh, that's right. I took the Fey Ancestry feat at 8th level. Actually, I took that at 8th level. At 4th level, I took just a straight stat boost, and I believe that I put that to my wisdom. So it would have been something along the lines of 14 in strength, which never really changed. I don't believe the dexterity ever changed either, so that would have been a 16. I believe Constitution is one thing that I did change. Or was that Constitution? No, it might have been Charisma. Because Fey Ancestry gives a single point towards one of your other stats. I don't remember which one. I believe you get to pick between 3. But his end stats ended up 14 strength, 16 dexterity, 16 constitution, 14 intelligence, 20 wisdom.
I believe Fey Ancestry gives you advantage on the saving throws for all the mental skills. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I will correct you. Let's see here. Pardon for just a moment. Talk amongst yourselves.
Against magic. Yeah, I guess while we're waiting on Brian... Oh, you already found it?
Yeah, I have.
I don't know why you're thinking like he doesn't have 90% of this information at his fingertips. He's like those old fantasy librarians. It's like, I have a book about this somewhere. Ah, yes, here it is. And you're like, oh, you turn around.
It's like...
Honestly, no lie, that's how I created Bob in the beginning.
Yeah.
Was like just the idea of... It's like a mixture between Albus Dumbledore and like the old Merlin. You know, like he's willing to give information in a cryptic way, but always just like, oh yes, here it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in my head I had him like envisioned before he became like some guy from like Brooklyn.
Boston.
You know?
I've noticed that a lot of your characters do that, where they become Brooklyn. Like, very
they got that like hard edge sound. I don't know why.
Because it's the only voice that he can do. No, I'm kidding.
It's just a comfortable voice.
The growth.
I think you're just itching to play Stanley all the time.
Yeah. I mean, like, he was still my hands down my favorite. Stanley did not make an appearance in this game.
He didn't, which is surprised. I was waiting for him to show up.
Because Stanley was going to be the actual voice of Asmodeus.
Somehow. No, I liked the silky smooth Asmodeus that's just like, oh, you think so, do you?
Yeah. No, yeah, you really wanted him to be like, hey, what the fuck are you doing here?
The hell do you think you're doing?
Yeah.
You're messing up my whole operation.
Futurama, that's the Stanley one. I use guys.
So, Fey Ancestry came along with my racial category of being half-elf. And you're correct that it does give advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and magic can't put me to sleep.
Right.
That is correct for that. But the actual feat I took, which was Fey Touched.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that is a little bit different. That increases either your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. And you also learn the Misty Step spell, and 1 first-level spell of your choice. First level must be from the Divination or Enchantment School of Magic. You can cast either of these spells without expending a spell slot. Once you cast either of the spells in this way, you can't cast this spell again unless you finish a long rest. You can, however, cast these spells using spell slots of the appropriate level. The spellcasting ability is increased by this feat. So, like, if you're using Misty Step, then if you're using your charisma to like up, then you cast it off your charisma.
Cool. So what else about your character then? I know you made...
What was the backstory?
Yeah.
That's one thing I want to know. What was the backstory about the brother that you initially had intended to play that we wildly disrupted?
Okay, so this is a real story about how I came up with this character. Because when you approached me with the idea of doing a Twitch game, doing it in an Eberron setting, and recording it and everything else, I wanted to come up with a character, not just in terms of concept, because I can come up with a million different concepts that are fun things that sound like, you know, they could be a lot of fun to play. But what I specifically wanted to do was I wanted to not just play a concept, I wanted to play an actual story. Give you something to kind of like run with. Because, again, if I say I'm going to make a character who's like RoboCop, you know what I'm saying? That's a concept that might be fun to play with. Like, okay, well, how do I do that?
Yeah, but it doesn't give Joel anything to add in. Yeah.
Right. So here's my story about like what happened. I'm in the car with my wife, and we are driving home from work, and I'm using her to kind of like bounce my ideas off of. Because even if she doesn't really play D&D all that much, even if, you know, she has limited experience regarding the rules or anything else like that, she's good for at least giving me an open ear to kind of like talk things out with. Because even if she can't reply always in the most, we'll say, knowledgeable manner regarding, like, you know, what would work, what wouldn't work.
Game mechanics and whatnot. Yeah.
She is still very much, at the very least, someone who can kind of listen to my crazy ideas and occasionally give me one of those side eyes where it's all like, yeah, okay, I know I just did something cool. Because, like, she'll give me that look. You know that look where she's just like, you're like, they look at you like, really, really, Brian, this is what we're doing? Yeah. So, I'm coming up with all these really fucking fun concepts, but nothing that I'm really thinking of, like, in terms of what could be story-wise. And at one point, I looked at a concept that I had, because I knew I wanted to do something that fit the setting, if you will. And I feel like a Circle of the Stars druid is really fun to play in an Eberron sort of setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's a druid on the one hand, but at the same time, it's very atypical in the sense that they're not necessarily concerned with the earth as much as they are with the stars.
Yeah.
Now,
they don't care about nature.
You saying that I would like to know, was knowing what you know now, would you have still gone with the Circle of the Stars?
Elaborate on that a little, because I don't know if I understand your question.
How the campaign was going to go all over, like how it ended up going all over the multiverse, would you have still kept your Circle of the Stars druid? If you could go back and do it again, knowing the scope of this campaign, would you have done the same thing?
Would I have kept the subclass, or would I have kept like the druid angle?
No, we're going to assume you're going to keep the druid.
The subclass. Because
if you wanted to multi-class, you always could have multi-class. But no, would you have kept the Circle of the Stars, or would you have done Circle of the Moon? Or
I mean, I think Circle of the Stars worked out just fine.
Oh, it did. I'm just asking. You know, like when you're done and you're like, oh, I wish I would have done this. You know, like when
sometimes yes, but like this is not one of those cases. I've never thought to myself that the Circle of the Stars in any way was like not what should be. Like it always felt like
it was what we needed. It was definitely what the party needed at all times, because your healing bump that you get from Chalice and your range bump from
Archer,
it turned the tide in our favors multiple times. So,
and that's something that I really like about Circle of the Stars. For people who don't really know me, I'm kind of like a versatile person. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. I like to be able to have a little bit of option. It's why for the longest time when I used to play like the online Final Fantasy 11, I always played Red Mage because I was the best goddamn Red Mage ever. Just because there's that versatility between like, oh, I can do a little bit of sword play, I can do a little bit of black magic, a little bit of white magic, whatever. I do it all. That's the kind of character I love playing. I love playing the Red Mage, and the Circle of the Stars druid is 100% Red Mage. They can do a good amount of healing. They can do extra damage. They can their Circle of the Stars ability allows them to really kind of add a lot of options to an otherwise, I won't say like not optional character, because there's a lot of options that you can do with a druid. In fact, there's a lot of options you can do with every class if you know what you're doing. Like you can make a fighter who has a tremendous amount of like range to him. And I'm not just talking weapon range. So that's what I wanted to do with this character. I wanted to very much make him the Red Mage of the group. Yeah. Because I didn't know going into it how I was necessarily going to play him mechanically. What I was certain about was how I was going to play him as a character. Because Eberron is big on neo-noir storytelling. It's very big on the whole detective sort of thing, where, for example, alignments don't exist in Eberron. So you can have like good creatures that normally wouldn't be good, like a beholder or a succubi or something like that.
You can have good beholders and evil angels. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So what I really wanted to do with this was I wanted to make something that had depth to it as far as character was concerned. And that is how I started coming up with this idea of like, okay, well, what if mechanically, yes, he is a druid. What if that wasn't necessarily what he wanted to be? What if Edward, in a sense, is not who he is? And that kind of like brought up an interesting question again, I'm working all this out in the car with my wife. And eventually I remember something about Joel's wife really liking like soap operas and me wanting to kind of play to that. So
he loves those terrible things.
Yeah, so like, okay, what if?
I think it's Days of Our Lives is the one that she really likes. Like that, the really, really weird one too, where like everybody gives birth to a child and then becomes like a 27-year-old man in like the space of a month, and then immediately. Yeah. So she likes those weird ones. I think that's the one where like suddenly there's a vampires in it or some shit. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's cool. What I wanted to do was I wanted to make some depth, and I wanted to make it a little bit kind of like daytime soap opera. So I came up with the idea of having him be on the run, having his evil twin brother essentially assume his identity to get with his family for reasons, whether it be just pure jealousy or whether because he was like jealous of Edward's like status sort of thing within like their little community that they had. I had never really fleshed out why he wanted to do what he wanted to do, only that Edward couldn't go back to the life he was leading, and that he always wanted to, but at the same time, because another thing on my character sheet is that I suffer from awful visions of a coming disaster and I will do anything to prevent it. So I wondered to myself, like, okay, what if I can play that in? Like, what if the reason why I have these terrible, terrible, like, visions of a disaster is because of my brother? Like, what if someone implants the idea inside your head that these visions you keep having are of a coming disaster, and that if you stay around your loved ones, you are only putting them in harm's way, sort of thing. So what if my character then went off to try to find a way to avert the coming disaster so that he could, like, at one day return home to his family, because as long as, you know, he is around them, then he's putting them at harm's way. But if he can go out and search for this answer that he feels primally is somewhere amongst the stars, like, what if that's the whole thing behind him? Like, he becomes Circle of Stars because he's looking for a way to avert this disaster, to return home to I wanted to have layers to this character. Like, not just he is this way, but like, he is this way because of this and because of this.
I remember playing with Edward. Sorry, I remember playing with Garrett the first time that he shifted to Edward, and I was like,
you mean Garrett? Edward
the other way around.
Garrett.
Yeah.
Edward was timid, and then Garrett was the other one.
Yeah.
Edward was the
that's right. Edward the other one. Right. So the first time Edward shifted to Garrett, and I was like, the fuck was that?
I remember you first thought I had, like, schizophrenia.
I thought you were, like, freaking had, like, multiple personality disorder, and you have, like, this super violent, like, serial killer personality. And I was like, so I think I called Joel, and I was like, what is going on? Is Edward, like, freaking multiple personalities? And he was like, I don't know. I was like, oh.
See,
oh, no.
The thing I enjoy, because I've played games with you guys for so long, that I don't really... You guys are like, I have a concept. And I'm like, I don't care. Just, you know, pull it out in the game and let me see. Because I know both of you don't give it, like... You know, some people that play games and their sole purpose is to sow chaos.
Yeah.
But your purpose is to game as long and as often as possible.
Yeah.
Like, and so if we have a possibility of being able to play D&D for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, both of you guys are going to be like, you're fucking kidding me, right? Like, this is the best thing I've ever heard in my life. So I know you guys are going to create a character that is not going to break the game. It's
plays well with others.
It's not going to be deliberately causing chaos. It's going to be a character that is going to enhance the story. Whether for good or for bad, it's going to push the story forward. And so I knew very little of Edward. I knew he was going to be a druid. I had a Circle of the Stars druid. That's it. That's all I knew. I didn't know shit about it. I still don't know much about the class. And I knew Ticto was going to be a time wizard, which I was like, okay, also cool.
Yep.
But it was very, very interesting to me, like the whole thing. And to watch the storyline play out was really, really interesting. Yeah. What else do you want to add before we take before we switch over to Ticto? Find out
what
why
else do I
Ticto
want?
was the way he was.
I guess the only thing that I will say right now is I feel like the only reason why Edward was effective as much as he was because I feel like maybe there was a lot of kid gloves being used there. Like, because I look back at that last fight, and I think to myself, okay, the fact that I won a surprise round, that's not, terribly, like, okay, whatever, yeah, sure. The fact that I won initiative, okay, well, that is also unlikely given the, group that we're dealing with, but not impossible. Okay, yeah, sure, whatever. So the fact that I got off 2 cones of cold, not a big deal. And yeah, 2 cones of cold, especially when you're failing saving throws, is absolutely going to tear
devastating.
And I rolled really good there too.
And they're all grouped up.
Yeah, they're all grouped up. Like, so a lot of that made a lot of sense. But I absolutely know for a fact that if on
Mr.
that
Whiskers could have
round,
murdered you. Yeah.
Sorry?
Mr. Whiskers could have murdered both of us.
I don't know if he could have murdered both of us in the same round. He definitely could have done like a lot, because one of the things about Mr. Whiskers was that he was an absolute beast when it came to like just stacking up the damage. He was Arcane's trickster, so all he would have really had to do was to hide and attack with some sort of a spell. Like, he could have attacked with Fireball, and as long as he was hidden, he could have gotten like sneak attack damage on the Fireball.
Yeah.
See, one of the issues with that last battle is I have, because I use D&D Beyond for it, I did not have Mr. Whiskers' stat block. I didn't have any information for Mr. Whiskers, so I just rolled up a very quick basic, before a very quick basic Mr. Whiskers template, and I created the character out of it. And I do believe if I would have had your Mr. Whiskers, it would have been a very different game, because I had everything Piotr had. I had everything Piotr had available to me. That's all.
You had everything Peter and Logie had. You just didn't have Mr. Whiskers.
Yeah, and Mr. Whiskers. So that was the enigma that was in there. So like, I didn't know.
If you wanted to, I could have sent you the copy of the like PDF sheets that had all this stuff.
I didn't honestly know where you were going to go with it, and didn't think about it until afterwards. And I was like, because you guys are so good at not fighting, that I really thought there's going to be a way around it, Yeah. And that was an error on my part. And I hope it didn't detract from the storyline too much.
Oh, no, it didn't distract at all. I'm just saying that, like, I absolutely know that if I had been put to the test, that I would have had to work for it a lot more than I did. Like, I got really lucky, not only because they kept failing their saving throws, and because, like, I kept getting, like, really high rolls, whether it was my initiative or...
The dice gods do favor you, because I make a lot of my decisions based off of just random dice throws. And
the other thing I remember of Piotr was he's pretty tanky, but in combat, like, he's really solid in combat. No, he was solid in combat, but it takes him about 3 rounds to, like, ramp up. Because he basically casts, like, a succession of, like, support spells that are, like, damage stacking and buffing at, like, the party and stuff. But it takes him, like, 3 rounds to get to that point. So he's like, which is why he's tanky. So.
Yeah. I do think to myself, though, I wonder how it would have gone with...
like in a full combat.
If we would have still had Fodor with us, and what that would have looked like, because he was always a little bit more quicker to act, as a barbarian, and I think would we have ended it in the same way? But
I will say this much. If we had had Fodor, he would have engaged in melee combat, which would have made it a lot harder for me to cone a cold.
Yeah. Would have been engaged in melee combat. But also, he was like, he would have been a 12th level barbarian. So they are...
He wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, they are just damage-producing machines.
Yeah. Would have been interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of that one, in our next campaign, depending on what we're doing and how it goes, I'm really thinking of bringing back Ted the Barbarian.
Oh, Ted.
I'm so excited to play that one. If we'll find out in our next week's session 0.
Ted the Accountant.
The Accountant Barbarian, yeah. All right, but we're gonna take a switch over to Ticto. Do you have more you want to add about Edward and why you did it, or?
I think, unless you have any particular questions about Edward, I think.
Are you sad? Well, yeah. One question: are you satisfied with how his story ended?
Yes, I think that because in my mind, the thing that I think he maybe comes to grips with is that while his brother might not have been entirely truthful with him regarding the reason why he left and everything else, like I can see now that like Edward would probably think that his brother just did want to like manipulate him and get him out of the way, but he was in some way also right. There was a great disaster, and that Edward did have to travel the stars in order to fix it. So in a weird way, like, everything did actually end up happening the way in which he kind of would keep seeing in these visions that he had. But what I haven't decided is whether or not Edward eventually goes back to his family or not. Because on the one hand, he probably comes to grips with, like, okay, his brother was probably not being entirely truthful with him. That much, And even if he was, I'm still going to go kick his ass. Like, there's no, like, there's nothing that stops Edward from being any way conflicted about, no, we're going to go kick his ass. I'm just going to go beat the shit out of him for being a piece of shit.
All right. Siblings do.
I mean, yeah, because he's fucking my wife. You know what I'm saying? Like, I no, there's
I feel like that was a thing that we could have probably led with. All right.
Actually, that is one part of his backstory we never touched upon. I was gonna have it where his kid isn't his kid. I was gonna have brothers.
That would have been intense. All right, we have spent a fair amount of time on Edward. Let's go to Ticto.
So, I was just looking through my character sheet, and something that I think is interesting is I'm looking at the description for Ticto, which I don't think I've looked at since, like, I first made the character. And I'm just gonna drop this list for his personality and stuff. Personality traits. I use polysyllabic words that convey the impression of great erudition. Ideals, logic. Emotion must not cloud logical thinking. Bonds. I've been searching my whole life for the answers to a certain question, and my flaw is I speak without really thinking through my words, invariably insulting others.
You embodied that.
And as for something that I haven't looked at since the very beginning of the campaign, I think I captured that. I don't think I ever broke that character once the entire time. Like, Ticto is too smart for his own good. I basically, when I made this character, I wanted I was like, I want a Chronomancer, and I'm a bit of a min-maxer, so I want, whenever I make a character, I'm not like a full min-maxer, but when I make a character, I want my character to be the best at whatever the fuck I decide I want my character to be doing.
So you build him like an engineer would build a character.
Yeah, right. I build my wizard, and that wizard, by God, is going to have max intelligence. he's going to be, you know, he's going to have
be able to lift a drink to his mouth, but
yeah, he's going to be weak as fuck, but he's going to have a high con so that he can at least have some health, you know. He's going to have, I'm going to give him some dexterity so that he at least has some armor class, but everything else, you know, is done. So, what my stat spread for Ticto by the end of the game was he had a +1 to strength, +4 to dex, +5 to con, +5 to intelligence, a +2 to wisdom, and we're not going to talk about charisma. So,
what was your charisma?
A 10.
So, nobody had negative stats, huh?
I got really lucky with my rolls for Ticto. I rolled really well for him. So
same.
That is one thing. Like I think I had an 18, a 16, like 2 14s, and a 12 and a 10. So I got really lucky with my rolls. But basically what I decided I wanted for Ticto was I wanted a wizard. Initially, I wanted sort of a time wizard that was kind of, because of his meddling with time, kind of could never really, like, was bad about time because of that, because he could never actually, basically a senile time wizard that, like, never actually knew, like, when he was. That was what my initial idea was. And I think I did that a little bit. It happened especially, you know, once we actually got into the real meat of the main campaign, where we realized that where Ticto's the one that figures out that something's wrong with the time stream, and he's seeing these like double vision sort of scenarios. But I think I didn't lean into that as well as I could have, but that was my sort of idea, was Ticto cares about two things: time and magic. You know, so every time he talks to somebody, if it doesn't have to do with time or magic, you're probably not going to get much small talk out of him. He's probably going to tick you off because he's going to keep asking you questions until, like, you give him the information that he wants, even if you don't have it. So that was kind of my idea for Ticto. So he's very knowledgeable on things. He had, you know, all of his intelligence skills were basically, I solely picked intelligence skills that he was proficient in. Everything else kind of hit the wayside. So like, he knows a lot about nature. He's really good at investigating things. He knows his history. He knows his magic. Nothing else. Because one interesting other thing about his background was he was a cloistered scholar. So he basically spent all his time reading and stuff. But what's interesting is
that came across beautifully of like...
Because, so like the cool thing about...
I read about this, but never saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, I've never seen this before, but I've read it. You know, one interesting thing is, I don't know if you did this on purpose, Joel, but his background feature is that he has library access. So it gives him access to, you know, usually if you want to go to certain parts of, like, you know, special parts of the restriction sections, you have to go through a bunch of interviews, you got to do applications and stuff. But he can basically just, like, pay big fees and whatnot. But him, by his, like, background, he's able to basically, like, have access to whatever information he wants outside of something like crazy. So that was what was interesting. He basically walked into the library and just got like blanket access to it. You know, just by his background. One thing I will say that I kind of regret is I did not do. I more went as the concept of the character. I didn't have as much of a backstory for him. His backstory that he was a bookworm that didn't have very good social skills. I didn't really plan in any kind of additional stuff beyond that. But
I think he was great. I think the way you put of this like nerdy bookworm who is more smart than he has sense.
Yeah.
And actually manipulate the elements.
Yeah. He's basically just like too smart for his own good, like, which is why it was probably really benefited him that he had Edward to kind of like iron out those spots that would not have, you know, he's got a 0 for charisma, Lena, for God's sake. And every time you like told me to like roll a persuasion, I was like, all right, here comes another failure.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I think that we did well. Like, I balanced the wisdom, whereas you were very book smart. Like, whenever Joel was telling me to roll like an intelligence check, I was like, okay, well, yep, this
not my bag.
Yeah, that's not my thing. But I mean, and I feel that like we played that dynamic really well.
Yeah,
like, I was very much wisdom. You were very much intelligence.
Yeah, it was funny because there's so many times where it's like Ticto would have a very, very logical argument for somebody, like why something should be some way, but because he has the charisma of a rock, they'd just be like, no. I'm angry at you because your words make sense, but that doesn't mean I want to agree with you.
Lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Exactly.
It was interesting how to go, and I love Ticto's kind of like fumbling way of getting in there, and how there was never he never walked in a place and was like, good morning, he'd just kick in the door and be like, I'm going to need you to tell me everything you know about the city of North Cove. Yeah. And they're like, well, this is a donut shop, and probably not going to work. You know, a good morning would be nice. You know, like how he came in there to this.
He was the personification of that meme where it's like, sir, this is a Wendy's.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, manners. Right. Good morning. Tell me what you want. What I want to know. Even his owl, which he finally won over at the end of by the end of the campaign. Arguably,
him over? Like, I don't remember that.
Yes, I did because I was like the moment that Ticto raged out and was like beating up the giant because he killed Watcher, and then I brought Watcher back and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't want that to ever happen to you again.
Must have missed that. I don't remember you actually bringing him back.
I did.
Yeah, once you got hit in the face with the giant club, remember?
Yeah.
But then you never used him again.
Like, I did.
Watcher was there constantly, and then after he got like killed, and you had to resummon him, you were kind of like, "We'll just leave Watcher over there."
Yeah.
Like you used him pretty regularly, and then near the end, after he got murdered.
I didn't have like. By that point, you know, at a certain point, like the familiar becomes kind of like after the first few levels, your familiar becomes kind of like useless. Let's be real here.
He becomes
it's how you play it.
Passive.
Yeah, it becomes more of a passive thing.
Some people will play the familiar as like they have to do everything with it, and then others it's just a thing.
Yeah. I think I did a really good. I just think that after a certain point, there wasn't like the things that we were doing. He couldn't really help me with, and I didn't want to. There were times where I was like, I want to bring Watcher back, but I can't think of a reason to like use him. You know, like he was helpful when we were talking to like searching for celestial things because he could like sniff that out, but like. I couldn't really. After we left Faerun, there wasn't really a occasion to use him again.
I will say that mechanically speaking, I'm so glad that you played that type of a relationship with Watcher in this edition, because I feel like, and other people can feel free to disagree with me on this, but I feel like in previous editions of D&D. Even having your familiar be anywhere near as active as Watcher was basically like a death sentence. Because I remember playing 3.5 when you had a familiar and your familiar was like intangibly linked to your constitution.
Yeah.
If your familiar died, you lost constitution.
Yeah.
And you could absolutely kill yourself. Like, so you never had your familiar do anything. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that was the nice thing about him being an owl, which is why I picked him on the down low, was he has that flyby ability. So I could use him and I could like send him through a combat zone and just like dragon's breath something. And with his like 50-foot fly speed, he's back out of combat again. Like he's basically just this like freaking predator missile just like flying through, dive bombing something, like hitting it for a bunch of damage, and then he's gone. And then the one time we faced anything with any rage abilities, he took a boulder to the face. So there's that. Did you ever regret giving us?
What was your end game for Ticto? Like, when you started, what did you think? Like, what did you imagine Ticto was going to become?
Well,
or did you just not
so the
really
thing with I was like his background where he's looking for the secret to a question. I think Ticto was basically, he started out as a low-level wizard. Ticto's goal as a time wizard was to his goal was to unlock the secrets of time for himself, which I think was accomplished with this campaign. He wanted to be able to freely travel time. He wanted to be able to control time. We never got to like high levels where he has like time stop, and he didn't have the access to those like really heavy hitting time spells. But I think the fact that he basically finds out he's BFFs with the Chronomancer or with the God of Time. I think Ticto's pretty happy just kicking it in, what was it? Tempora?
Yeah.
I think Ticto's happy with that. Like, he's just like, let me get this straight. I can be at the center of all time, and we just get to, like, kick it and, like, just learn magic. And Curtis was like, yep. It's like, Ticto's like, done. He has basically he basically has access to the font of all magic.
Of Chronos kind of like show you. Did you all like that was a pretty obvious.
So I didn't know that he was the god of time. I thought at one point
you knew he was something.
I knew he was something because I saw him like coming. I saw him like fluctuating through time. He's like an adolescent kid, and then he's like a gnome, and then he's a this, and he's a that. And I was like, okay, there's something weird going on with this guy. I don't get why people don't like him.
Like at the end, I was like, and even you are getting annoyed with his flippant use of polymorph. Like.
Yeah. I think that is very fun to sort of. I did at one point think that you had basically like paradoxed Ticto, and he was meeting a future version of himself. That's basically like, I'm trapped in this weird time loop. You're my only hope because you're my past me, sort of thing. And that's what I thought it was, but then turns out I was wrong. It was just the literal god of time trapped on Eberron.
Who literally is great with time, horrible with directions. Yeah. I can't find how to get home. Someone needs to take me there.
So he's just drunk.
Yeah. So what was that always your plan for Kronos? Or
well, before we get to the DM's plan, let's go ahead and take a short break, and we'll come back to questioning the DM about like.
I agree. Let's do that really quick. I want another cup of coffee.
All right. We'll be right back.
You get yourself some coffee there, Joel?
I did.
Awesome.
I
have this amazing mug that is a giant Snorlax head. I'm using it to store all this year's tabletop loot. Do you know about tabletop loot, Joel?
I have no idea. Please tell me more.
I know what tabletop
loot is. My one-stop shop for all of my Dice Concern needs. I pay them $25 a month, and they send me minimum 4 sets of dice every single month. Every set of dice is randomized, so I don't know what I'm getting beforehand, but they are all beautiful and amazing. Definitely well balanced. And quite frankly, I mean, it's just fucking fantastic. I don't have to worry about like going down to like some sort of hobby store and like interacting with people and socializing. Why would do that when you can just have dice sent to you on the regular?
There's no more.
Actually, you can go to Tabletop Loot right now, Joel, and you can enter the code NOL15 for 15% off any set of dice in their store. That's NOL15 for 15%.
Amazing.
I love it.
Alright, so you should get those candy dice. Just one day, just start eating your dice.
I'm just gonna like just shower and like
I did that one day, and you guys were not amused. So
Ticto, do you feel that you did him justice? Are you happy with his ending?
I'm happy with how this campaign ended. Now, is the story of Ticto over? I don't know, but I'm happy with how the campaign ended.
I have a question now that I've wondered for a while. Is, unlike most campaigns, you have access to like a few people that clarify your requests. You had an interesting, like, you got to be honest, the access to Bob simplified a lot of your logistical problems.
It fixed a lot of our problems. Once we got Bob on our side, and he was like, "Yeah, we actually really do need to fix this. This is really bad." What was your opinions of Bob? Because Bob was like a character from the first campaign and was actively in cahoots with the three who became gods. I think he's a dick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we would have never been able to like actually do this campaign without Bob, because when we met Bob is like the turning point where we kind of went from this game that didn't really seem to have like a whole lot of focus, to be honest, and all of a sudden,
I mean, most 1 to 3, I look at most campaigns as like from like level 1 to level 3, you're just kind of like turning over rocks, being like, maybe it's here, you know.
Maybe this is my adventure. Oh, nope, just more goblins.
What's over here? Oh, that's a squirrel. Never mind.
Yeah, a lot of campaigns can be that way, but I feel like this one and especially seemed kind of disjointed, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing for what it was, because it gave this element of like mystery and intrigue, which was perfect for Eberron.
Yeah.
But at the same time,
I think we had a path. We were like trying to find the scroll pieces and stuff.
Yeah, we had a sort of like basic understanding of like where we were going and what we were doing. But I think that once Bob came into the picture, that's when everything really started to click. Like, okay, this is what is happening. This is what you need to do. And here's what I'm willing to do to help you do that.
What I know, Ticto was incredibly frustrated with the fact that Bob is this extraordinarily powerful entity who apparently just for no reason refused to do
anything
to fix it. Because Bob was strong enough to have gone toe-to-toe with these demigods. You know, he was strong enough to go toe-to-toe with Piotr and Logi and Mr. Whiskers.
Yeah, he could have got, like, that was what was annoying, was, like, we knew, like, the power level that Bob possessed, because, you know, he's basically spoken in hush whispers by a lot of people that outside of, you know, on those, you know, in Faerun and
yeah, he's a guardian.
Yeah, and Shadowfell, like, he's basically, you know, oh, don't say his name too loud, he might actually show up, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But, like, when it came to actually fixing anything, he was a pain in the ass. Like, he made a problem. He knew it was a problem. He knew it was a multiverse-ending threat, and yet he wouldn't lift a finger. And it was very frustrating to Ticto.
I took a lot of this from folklore, and a little bit of, like, just the creature compendiums and the monster manuals and all of the other stuff in it. But, like, and a fair amount of it from the Dresden Files, but you know where all these characters, the Fae, if they make an agreement, they cannot, and it's like literally they cannot touch it. They cannot break it. Like if they made a promise, I promise I will never pick that rock up again. They're physically incapable of picking up that rock.
Yeah, I think there was one session where we basically like just argued with Bob, and I felt like he was arguing in bad faith most of the time. I was like, I'm trying to give you a loophole, and you're not. Like, I thought you Faye were all about loopholes, and he's just like, nope.
It's the unique thing that really tied Bob's hands is he was a Fae who are very, very rule-oriented, who essentially entered into a bargain with the god of lawyers.
Mm.
So, I mean, like, if you're ever going to have a loophole-free contract, it's between those two fuckers.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be like, what about if the moon is at a 2:30s, is at a 17-degree angle in the sky, and someone's wearing blue pants and he hands you a pencil, are you allowed to touch it? No. You're like, it's literally they're not allowed to do anything. I did toy with the idea of Bob coming out, and for a little bit of time, I did toy with the idea of Bob coming out and casting Power Word Kill and destroying one of the creatures. But then because he violated the agreement, like, he also died.
Mm.
Like, I had this whole scenario ranked out, and I was like, do I want to do it? And I couldn't really bring myself.
Yeah, you asked me about that. Bob. Yeah.
But there was a part where he was going to, show up, or because he was in the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first story, and he was going to come out and be like, and cast that, but that would have destroyed the entire timeline and himself.
Yeah.
And you would have been left with just fighting Logi and Piotr. And I did toy with that, like him breaking it and then causing himself to dissolve into nothingness because he violated his promise.
He's like,
I thought that would have been interesting.
Yeah,
well,
just
it does
little...
make a lot of sense that you were going to target Mr. Whiskers with it, because Mr. Whiskers was absolutely the wrench in that, scenario.
Oh yeah, Mr. Whiskers, if you hadn't fucked him up so hard in the very beginning,
yeah,
And
that 20'd my keep sane check.
I actually look at
yeah, if I had nat 20 in my because he basically went to fuck my brain up when he saw me, and then I was just like, nope, too smart for that bitch.
I actually have taken into account the way you guys played the way you played your characters in the past. Logic always was Piotr's stumbling block. Mm-hmm. Piotr was always able to be reasoned with. No matter what he was doing, Piotr could be rationalized into doing anything. He was rationalized into making the agreement, and he could very well have been rationalized into breaking the agreement.
Yeah.
But then Mr. Whiskers is not only in writing the story out now, but in playing, Mr. Whiskers is such a chaotic force.
It is pure chaos.
That understanding, I look at Mr. Whiskers will do things just for the shits and giggles. And he's like, this will be interesting. Let's see what's going on. But, Mr. Whiskers, in my mind, above all, is all about self-preservation.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Whiskers is not going to let himself get hurt. So when you came out there with those 2 Kona colds and just fucking nailed him, he was like, I'm out. It doesn't matter that he could turn your minds into jelly or any of that shit. He's like, it's too much of a risk. Fuck this place. I'm out,
He's like, the heat's here. Let's go.
Yeah, and Logi's the same way. Logi was always self-absorbed. He'll do what he has to do, but he's not sticking around. Mm-hmm. If it needs to be, if it's going to be something that is going to cause him harm, he's out.
Mm-hmm.
Logi is a trickster. He is a deceiver. He can lie for days and make you believe the most wild shit. But when it comes to direct confrontation, like those two would have been out. Piotr would stand his ground because Piotr is like filled with resolve on random things.
He's the most stubborn. He's very stubborn.
Yeah, and that's where it would take. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
And I think it was.
What was your feelings of the campaign overall?
Overall, I liked it. I actually, okay, let me put it to you this way. At first, I was a little disappointed. If only because I packed this character with the idea of playing an Eberron game, and it felt like very rapidly that idea of like an Eberron setting was like shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until it was just like not even a factor anymore. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So, like, in that sense, I became a little disappointed with it. But ultimately, I did like the campaign. We've talked about this before, Joel, you and me. Me and you have very different DM styles, and neither one of them is inherently better or worse than the other, but we have strengths that we play to. And I think that this campaign definitely played to that strength that you have of allowing your players this sense of like control, this sense of like what you do actually seriously affects things. Like, you are great at giving players that agency and just letting them run wild.
I am first and foremost, I am a storyteller. I love stories, but I like to not know what's going on as well. I like to have a plan and to have a goal, but then to let other people help paint the picture, if that makes sense. And you guys definitely, I remember campaign 1, you know, fuck you. How often was, you know, with Ben, I happen to have 2 spells. One of them is Featherfall. Fuck you. Like, who'd have thought that you would just, yeah.
I remember I was like, I look out the train.
You what?
I just remember I was like, I look out the train. It's like,
I cast Featherfall. Of course you do.
It affects 3 people. Let's go.
Right, and it was that, like, I like having to create this world, but yeah, there are people, like, I do remember what you guys say and do, and the people who are like if Ticto would have been an asshole walking into the library, those fucking goblins would have never let him back in.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that kind of shit. I like those stories, so.
But Ticto was very reverent when it came to the library, so.
Yeah. What about you? What about you, Ben? What was your thought?
I highly enjoyed the campaign, obviously, because I came back every week. And I think...
Well, we shouldn't say that because, like, David didn't come back, but that's not because he didn't enjoy the campaign.
Oh, that wasn't a dig. I should point that out.
I just want to, like, point that out, because, like, I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah,
I do wish that circumstances were different and David would have been able to continue. Perhaps he'll join us again in another campaign, but, you know, life
happens.
Life does, in fact, happen, and he is and always will be a founding member of our little group.
We want to say for anyone who is concerned, though, he very much enjoyed the game. It's not that his health is bad or anything like that. He's fine. You know, it's not anything that anyone should be worried about necessarily. It's just the fact that, you know, life happens, people get busy, schedules change, things happen.
Sometimes family takes priority and things like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He is fine. He is doing well. We hope to see him back at some point in time. The door is always open, but I would have loved to seen how Fodor and his wild paranoia would have come to fruition. One of my favorite moments of the campaign was him sitting there and finding out that Ticto has a fucking iron gut.
Yeah.
And they're just getting hammered, and Ticto
drinks him under the table.
Like 18 or some shit.
My con was higher than his.
Yeah, the con of the wizard is higher than the barbarian. And like, and he's sitting there and getting hammered, and he's like, I want to see if he's a 1T. And I remember him just popping that out.
Yeah.
my reaction, and we have one of the videos on the Instagram of me. What? Like that was such a those little nuances that make me so happy. Which is why I don't like to know a lot about your characters, is because then I get my genuine reaction and I have to roll with it. But to find out that one of my characters has a ridiculous fear of snake people and thinks they're lurking at like the conspiracy theorists thinking reptilians are everywhere. That makes me so happy. I want to see if he's a snake person. What? What are you talking about? And then my favorite as a DM was the times with we're like, Ticto, I'm taking a bath and I decide to summon what? Watch, it's time to have a conversation. Right now?
Yeah.
When you're naked?
You're a bird. Why do you care?
Yeah. So, you decide to call me when you're... So, bubbles are clothing. Man, you're right. I do like that one accent. I gotta figure out some new ones.
Yeah.
I do pick the same one. Everybody sounds like a
You got that. Town. Yeah, it's gruff New Yorker, and that you have...
I've never been to New York. You think I would be like...
You have annoyed New Yorker, and then you have gruff guy that talks like this sort of orc guy.
I really need to work on it. The problem is being sensitive, trying to be sensitive of different accents. You don't want to inherently insult someone, by doing the wrong accents. You pick a generic gruff and a generic rough, And I don't know. I think when I played Kronos, and I think his incitement. The awkward excitement came out pretty well.
Yeah.
But that's a hard character to run all the way through of the cloistered scholar who's finally able to see something he's read about.
Yeah. It's yes, I read about this.
Yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah.
But it is also different as keeping track of so many different creatures. And I do think Gillian, I liked his voice. Which I took that character from, I know all of you have seen the Neverending Story, but the bookkeeper, yes, they have things that don't make any beeps, they're called books.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I imagine the god of the tome being like,
Yeah. Wait, you met Gillian, and you got him to talk to you?
Yeah,
wow.
You're kidding me. Yeah.
Yeah. I also heavily enjoyed that one where I drunk photo under the table and me being like, wait, what? Wan T? What are you talking about?
Snake person.
You mean a snake person?
Yeah. And the ogre who ran the bar.
Yeah.
I do wish we would have spent more time in Eberron. It was fun, but once you guys got a hold of a mission, you were like, fuck it, let's go. They're like, you want to have something to eat? I'll grab something on the way. I can produce food. I don't need that shit. You guys took after the quest. Once you figured it out, like a bullet. You guys were just, this is where we're going. You're like bloodhounds on a scent.
Well, we're both story junkies, so once you actually show us what the story is, it's fucking okay. I guess
fucking let's go. Helmer comes in, he's like, hey, I really like what you're like, shut up! I don't have time for your shit!
Yeah.
Let's go!
Yeah, you as
a lot more towns and, maybe be able to, shut the fuck up, nerd! We're going to the beginning!
Yeah. You as a DM are also not a huge fan of downtime either.
Incorrect. I had tons of, I love downtime.
You don't give opportunities for it very often, is what I'm saying.
I do think that what Brian says of being one of my biggest assets, of being able to give the player agency, is also one of my biggest weaknesses as well. Because, you guys, I give you opportunities to be like, let's go do this. But, if you do a shopping episode, Joel's going to fucking lose his mind.
Yep.
I need to go and decide. Fine, it's done. No, I want to role play it. Well, you're on your own. I'm going to come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
I do need to work on some of the tedium of the story to kind of flesh it out, you know. But like, if you want side quests, I can do those all day. Those make me happy.
Yeah,
but I do also.
But I think just the tone of the campaign, especially after we got out of the Mournlands and met Bob, the tone of the story was very urgent. Like there wasn't time to, you know, go and, you know, help Mrs. Whiffles rescue Fluffles from a tree. You know.
Yeah. I mean, when the threat is not just a warlord amassing power, but an entity whose goal is to destroy all of existence, like it does kind of lead.
The stakes got upped very quickly in our campaign.
Very quickly.
And I think
the Lady of Pain was like starting to like actually fall apart, and it's like, no, we need to do this now.
Yeah, she's like the cap of the wheel. Like, that is fair. The next one I run will be a little bit more slowed down.
Yeah. So we're getting close to time, so I wanted to talk about what our plan was moving forward. So next week, we're going to be doing a session 0 for my campaign. I haven't had Spelljammer just came out yesterday. This is the book set. They released a campaign setting, a monster manual, a monster manual, and an adventure module. I have not had the chance to peruse the module yet, so I haven't decided if that's what we're going to be doing. But I think what our plan is Candlekeep Mysteries. So it gives our people a little chance to. Just by virtue of how this campaign setting works, it's very open-ended in terms of all of the missions are sort of one-shots. It is part of sort of an overarching campaign setting or location, and I think it'll work well for us. Otherwise, I'm going to review Spelljammer.
Which I'm very excited about. Sorry to cut you off. I'm very excited about it, and I told this to everybody. But with it being a various one-shots, it brings us the opportunity to have guests, which I love the guests because they always add a new flavor to it. So
I'm going to review Light of Xarxis in the next couple of days, at which point we will start talking. If I enjoy it a lot, we might do that one from the Spelljammer setting. Otherwise, we'll probably be doing Candlekeep. Now, I told Brian a little bit about this. I might have found us a 4th player. I'm in talks with them. We're going to meet with. I'm going to have you guys meet with him in the next couple of days to kind of test out the waters, see if he'll meet our dynamic or not, and give that a shot. So that's pretty much it for me for that. So we might have a 4th player. We might not. He's equipped for it. I've known him a long time, and I think he'd be a good fit for the group, but we'll see.
I'm very excited. You know my opinion. My opinion is I'd like to do the Candlekeep.
Yep.
Because
I think based off of reception from the two of you, I think that's probably where we're going to be going. Well, also, I'm not as familiar with Spelljammer yet, so I don't know if I'd want to go right into it. But I've been reading through this campaign module for a long time. I've run it like at least a session, like 1 or 2 sessions on it a few times, and I've heavily enjoyed it every time. So I think that's what we'll be doing.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things that we have to look at for Candlekeep is that landing, because there's so many, it's a bunch of mini stories all in one big story. Like to find a landing zone that'll be it. And I pushed my idea super heavy of us like being. Yeah. Like a PI group or like an, because it's Candlekeep Mysteries of like, I wanted, and I know I told this to Brian and he was like, I've told it to both of you actually, like being like a noir thing, and you're like, why the fuck didn't we do that in the other one? Yeah. Just like I want my character to be like a pontificating, type.
Yeah, I've told Joel that I kind of want him to do the noir detective thing where he just looks at the screen and starts monologuing, and everyone's like, and he's just got it like slightly unhinged. And everyone's like, I can hear you, right? You know that, right?
I walked in and I could tell from her curves that she was going to give me trouble, both in my head and in my heart.
She walks up and slaps him. He's like,
"What are you talking about?"
Have either of you ever seen the movie Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid?
No.
No, I have not.
No, I feel like I need to. Because if it's got that kind of yammering, I think that's awesome.
Okay, you know what it is? It's Steve Martin doing a noir-style, like, adventure where he's a private detective and whatnot. But here's the kicker. Most of the movie is just made up of mishmashes of other old movies. Like, literally spliced together, like in fucking Windows Movie Maker, where you don't actually see Steve Martin's character, but then, like, he gets inserted into the... it's great. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys. You should probably watch it. It's a really good movie, and it's very funny. But I was going to ask you something, Joel. What did you want your character to be named as?
I think we have to figure out in the session 0 what we're going to be doing. Unless you have an idea right now. The name for me is less important. I just want to make sure we're balanced. But I would love... I don't know. I'm toying. I want to be just a melee character. So, like, I really am thinking...
Does Stanley have a last name?
Oh, my God. Finkelstein. Remember? He nicknamed himself the Storm. And if he did that, I would be a wizard. I would be...
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Not Stanley. What was the name of the barbarian again?
Ted? Ted didn't have a last name.
Okay, so Ted has no last name.
No, Ted has no last name.
Ted Columbo.
Because I was...
He had one magic item, and it was a tie that he would have to loosen because it magically clothed him. Because if not, he would be naked.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly had the idea of playing a monk.
Oh my God.
Mm.
And I was strongly considering playing like a badass, like adult kick-ass version of Short Round.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Mm.
And so if Ted had like a last name, like say for example Jones, it'd be like, you call him Dr. Jones.
I feel like one of my issues with character creation, because I've been the DM for so long, is like you forget to play a character. You forget, like, that character you're stuck with the whole thing. Yeah. So like you have to, because you remember when we played Icewind Dale, I played Dabble Dab Ningle, and my idea was like this trash talking little gnome who's like Samuel L. Jackson. You know, there's no motherfucking stakes. That one. I love the idea for like 10 minutes. Then after that, I'm like, I'm going to do a whole fucking campaign with this. I hate this guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I was thinking in the beginning of this one, like, I don't want to just play a concept. I want to play a character.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I have 20 different concepts, but, you know.
Yeah. But, like, I could do, honestly, if you were stuck, I could bring Stanley back as, like an evocation wizard or something, you know?
No. Play Ted. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll think about it. We have to see what we come up with. We'll come up with that on session 0, and we'll build them together. And also, next week, we will be able to do the session 0, and then we're going to be on it. We'll have a break because you're on vacation.
I thought you guys were going to stream in the meantime while I'm gone.
Are you in the... We'll just have probably... I was toying with the idea of...
So I have all next week, and then I'll be gone for a week. So
yeah, so next week we'll do the session 0, and then I was suggesting Brian and I maybe could do tips on world building.
Mm-hmm.
As people, we've run several campaigns. I favor the making up the homebrew. Brian is adept at both. For those of you that want to sit there and have talked about, we've gotten a lot of stuff in our chats of, I've never played D&D. I've been thinking of being a DM. Do you have any advice? We're very active in our social medias, especially like I am on Instagram with people. How do you come up with concepts for campaigns? So we're going to use that time you're gone to answer a couple questions that people might have, or just put some more information out there on what it's like to come up with a campaign or how your DM style works. and how you help move the story along. Just some common DM questions.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Ben, if you're able to join us, that's cool, but you're going to be on vacation, so spend time with the family.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Brian and I could talk about world building and stuff like that for days, so.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's one of my favorite parts, honestly. I think it's...
Monday. I wasn't here for that. Did you guys announce what book we're doing after?
Actually, I have it here.
Mm-hmm. So we have our...
On Busy's pick, it is Poison Study.
Ah.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm already almost finished with it. It's I like it.
Yes, and this next Monday we're going to go back into the world of comics to discuss the Silver Surfer for next Monday's episode.
Oh, next Monday's episode is Silver Surfer? Like just purely Silver Surfer?
Well, the lore around the Silver Surfer. What I like is I have always been a huge fan of the Silver Surfer, Galactus, all of it. So all of whatever's in his world for the Silver Surfer, which is pretty much the entirety of the Marvel Universe.
Marvel cosmic shit.
Yeah, I love the Marvel cosmic stuff, especially the entities like Eternity and Infinity and all of those.
Order I like Chaos, yeah.
Yeah. And I think
that shit's really weird when you get to it.
Yeah, it is. It does get so twisty-turny on it. And I love the idea of the Silver Surfer because he's such an most characters have a villain, and the Silver Surfer doesn't really have a villain. He's his own worst enemy by being like, just pontificated, like, what is my purpose? Well, your purpose was to defeat an even stronger thing. You know, and now you don't.
Aww.
No. Oh.
What is my purpose? Yeah, you pass butter. Aww.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but, so we look forward to you seeing you on Monday. As always, this stream will be uploaded to YouTube Thursday at 7 o'clock. Be sure to keep your eyes out on Friday at 7 o'clock, where you will see Monday's episode uploaded onto YouTube, and a new episode of our podcast is available. I thank all of you that have taken the time to join us on this journey through the multiverse. I'm sad that it came to an end. We will be working on bringing this in a book format at some time if I ever get off my ass and finish it. And I'm very excited to be a player and see what hopefully Candlekeep will bring us, or Starjammer, or Spelljammer, whichever makes Ben happy. But I guarantee it will be interesting. We look forward to you guys continuing our Nerds of Legend journey.